We are here again. That is the opening line of a new CNN politics piece written by the two journalists who broke the Watergate story in the 70s. Bob Woodward and Carl Berstein continue their analysis with this. A powerful and determined president is squaring off against an independent investigator operating inside the Justice Department. A comparison between Donald Trump now and President Richard Nixon 45 years ago. Carl Berstein joins us now. He and Woodward won the Pulitzer Prize for their Watergate coverage. He also co-wrote the legendary book, All the President's Men. And Carl, you point blank say Trump's Russia response is eerily similar to Nixon's leading up to the Saturday Night Massacre, the night in 1973 when President Richard Nixon fired Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox and Attorney General Elliot Richardson, as well as the Deputy Attorney General, resigned. I'm so glad to have you here this weekend. I want to go slowly through some of the parallels you draw. I mean, you write everything from how Nixon wanted to ensure his Attorney General was an ally in a new Watergate investigation, talking about threats to fire the special counsel even before it happened. Also, the question that his chief of staff asked, it makes you wonder what must be on those tapes. We've heard so many people ask, what is he hiding when it comes to Donald Trump? And on another thing you wrote, you write, Nixon knew that firing Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox would invite a move to impeach. So let's start there. Do you think President Trump appreciates what the consequences could be if he fires Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller?
Yes, I think he does, and I think he nonetheless is determined from every available scrap of evidence we've seen to make the Mueller investigation go away, to bury it, to undermine it, to demean it, to obstruct it. Presumably that's because he does not want whatever Mueller is finding to see the light of day, and it perhaps is more important to Trump to bury the information and the investigation than to have that information seen by the public and prosecuted if indeed there is cause for prosecution of either himself or members of his family or his businesses. Let me take a second to say what this article is that is on both the CNN and Washington Post websites that Bob Woodward and I have done. It is largely an excerpt from our book, The Final Days, written in 1976, and the excerpt about what occurred in the firing of the special prosecutor by Nixon and the so-called Saturday Night Massacre. And then we have written a few paragraphs interspersed at the top of this piece about the situation today. But what you see when you read this piece are these resonances from what we wrote in 1976 that are so relevant today, and so many parallels to the situation with the special prosecutor, including Trump's tweets of the last couple days.
What stands out from those tweets in the last couple of days that you're seeing parallels from?
That Trump is trying to convey the impression that he is a victim here rather than a perpetrator. And that his conduct should not be what is under investigation, but rather that the conduct of the special prosecutor and of the FBI should be under investigation. It's a total red herring. Look, the Russians, our intelligence community from top to bottom, knows that the Russians interfered in our election. And there are allegations about possible collusion with the president, with members of his family, with his business organization. We don't know if those assertions are true or not. What we do know is he has tried at every turn to cover up whatever it is that he wants to hide and keep the special prosecutor and the American people from knowing. And what you read and hear in these resonances with 1976, the piece written in 76 and the Saturday Night Massacre of 73, is the president's, both Nixon and Trump's, determination to make these investigations go away.
You do write a lot about how determined Nixon was to make sure that the tapes were not given over as they were to the special prosecutor. He wanted to create a transcript instead. There were all these other ideas of how they could sort of give him what he wanted without really giving him what he wanted. Meantime, we have President Trump preparing for a potential interview with Robert Mueller. the bottom line is he has said time and again he would be happy to sit down with Mueller.
I think many of us will believe it when we see him sit down with Mueller. Look, we have no reason to believe almost anything that Donald Trump says. What is so extraordinary about him and his presidency is the incessant, compulsive, continual lying. And this is not me sitting here as a commentator saying this. This is demonstrable repertorial truth. The number of lies, the consistency of lying by the President of the United States, which ought to be concerned particularly to Republicans who are looking supposedly to see what the facts are here and instead seem to be forming a bodyguard around the President to protect him instead of protecting Mueller's investigation. It's extraordinary. We've never had a president who lies like this, certainly in the modern era, even Nixon.
So when you write in your piece that just 3 days after the Saturday night massacre, 44 separate Watergate-related bills had been introduced in Congress, 22 called for impeachment investigation. Again, 44 bills. How do you think this Congress, both houses Republican-controlled, would react to a situation in which the president fired Robert Mueller?
I think there would be, inevitably, move to impeach the president. But I think also Trump would expect that, and Trump is banking that he could stop impeachment, defeat impeachment, certainly defeat conviction in the Senate for anything. Look, I think what we're seeing here now, look, we know that Trump told his counsel, his White House counsel, that he wanted the counsel to have Mueller fired, and the counsel said he would quit rather than fire him. Trump is determined to make this go away. But one of the things that's going on right now is the leaving of the Justice Department of the number 3 person there, Rachel Brand. And it's hugely significant because if Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General in charge of this investigation, were to be fired by the president, the next in command, if Rachel Brand, who is going to leave, is the Solicitor General of the United States, Noel Francisco. And there is every expectation, I'm told, by people in the White House that Francisco is and would be very sympathetic to President Trump's view that he, Trump, is the victim in this investigation.
Let me stop you for just a second, Carl, because we also know he would have conflicts of interest based on what his law firm's work is doing connected to the Trump White House, the administration. So it doesn't sound like it's as clear cut, right?
It's not that clear cut. He would have conflicts of interest, but the most important potential conflict of interest, and let me say something that's a little new here, is that one of the reasons or factors that may figure in Rachel Brand leaving the Justice Department is that her husband is a partner in the Sidley Austin law firm. And that law firm is going to take over the defense of Rick Gates, who has been indicted with Paul Manafort. That means, and the White House has been aware for a while, that Rachel Brand was going to have to recuse herself from any oversight of the investigation should Rosenstein be fired. And the White House knows this, has been operating under the knowledge that she would not be in charge of the investigation, and so their strategies have included that fact for a while now, that she would have had to recuse herself because of the conflict with her husband's law firm.
So, Carl, are you saying you don't buy that?
Situations. Well,
sorry, Carl, I didn't mean to interrupt, but when we are hearing she's leaving because of this dream job with Walmart, are you not buying that that's the reason she's leaving?
Oh, no. I buy that's the reason, but it has also been in her knowledge and that of the lawyers who are representing other clients in these investigations, and it's known by the White House that she would have had an inevitable conflict of interest unless her husband chose to leave the Sidley Austin law firm, that probably she would have had to recuse herself. And that would then mean that the next in line would be Francisco. He indeed also has some potential conflicts. They might not be quite as direct as she has, but we've got a situation in front of us that none of us knows where this is going to go. What we do know more than anything is the president is doing everything he can to play to his base, to picture himself as the victim, set himself up in such a way that if he were to fire Mueller or close down this investigation, that he would be able to survive an impeachment move. And look, so far he has been hugely successful, the President of the United States, in getting 35, 40, 45% of the people in this country, if we're to believe the polls, to support him in both his presidency and in his view of this investigation, which is to make the conduct of the press, to make the conduct of the FBI, to make the conduct of the intelligence community the issue instead of the conduct of Donald Trump, his family, his businesses, et cetera, et cetera. It's extraordinary, and it's been based on a kind of bodyguard of lies so far.
Carl Bernstein, always good to have you on. Thank you so much.